and I titled it for My Yoke is Easy and My Burden is Light. And I just really wanted to focus on that because, well, first of all, my mom brought this text to my attention last time because she was just trying to understand something about it. I forgot what it was, and then I like thought about it more and more, and it's just like weird wording. Just a verse in general. So I had been thinking about it, and I think it's very poignant. But yeah, so I'll start off by saying that stress is something obviously we all face. I don't want to overstate the obvious, but it's a huge battle for all of us. I think some more than others, maybe depending on our stages in life or our phases, but it's really a silent killer. And ever since I kind of started looking into this, like all the symptoms it can cause physically, it's been like a big thing that I've like tried my best to fight against. I have led like a honestly like kind of like a stressful life. And so it's just been important for me to understand like me being stressed and me being anxious and how to manage that because like I stated here, it really has a horrible impact on your health. Like the fact that it can cause chronic diseases like heart disease, stroke, diabetes. It weakens your immune system, insomnia, fatigue, headache, high blood pressure. It's just crazy because it's like it's something invisible, but it's such a big determinant in our lives. So yeah, I just want to overstate how important it is for us to really take the time to understand ourselves and to make learn skills to manage stress, that's both spiritually and physically too. So understanding stress is super important within ourselves. And I think the most important thing I've learned is to self-reflect and really like slow down and understand what I'm going through. I think that's been so important for me to process like really hard times or really hard situations. And it takes practice doing that because like when I was really young, I was very well, not always, but like when I went through a hard time and I was younger, like in middle school, I was very jumpy and I was very like angry and like I didn't understand, what was like the reason for my behavior was, like stress and anxiety for things that were happening around me, and in my head sometimes I was like, oh, I'm just like an angry girl, or I'm just like this is just like my personality, you know what I mean? And a lot of times people take those symptoms and they think that it's their personality, but the whole time they're just living under stress. So it's just important to notice things about ourselves and about our patterns and behaviors, and that's going to help us so much to be able to intervene because that's the most important part. Like it's everyone is gonna maybe snap at some point. It's so overwhelming, like situations, school, just things can get really, really tough really fast. And it's not it's impossible to be perfect, but it is possible to practice intervening and practice kind of like mitigating that damage. So yeah, I just put a little bit of like things that can manifest, things that stress and anxiety can manifest as that I think Brother Romo touched on. So sometimes physical can be fatigue, sleeping difficulty, chest pain, stomach ache. And sometimes, this can be, especially for younger people, it can be people can get accused of being lazy. If you're experiencing fatigue because you're stressed and stuff like that, your parents might say, stop being lazy, just get up. Headaches, migraines, emotionally, not able to focus, mood instability, like I said, getting angry, depression, sadness, not being motivated in school, and things like that. Behavioral, unhealthy eating, coping mechanisms like overeating, drug or alcohol use to soothe, social withdrawal, nail biting, stressful thoughts, and sometimes loss of appetite. So yeah, these are basically same thing, overeating, using drugs, lying even. And it's interesting because a lot of the times people judge like drug users, they judge troubled teens, they judge, things like that as like, and they just sometimes, we all sometimes put people off of like, oh, that kid just acting out, but almost all of the time, it's just they're just going through so much internally, and they're just letting it out in, the way they know how. And everybody does that differently. So I think we all know, fight, flight responses, but there's fight, flight, and freeze. So I would say I resort to fight. I like to take action. So like when sometimes like my responses in the past, like I said, like for example in middle school and things like that, have been like anger, and that's the way I have manifested stress and anxiety. But yeah, it could be yelling, kicking, demanding things from your parents, being defiant, not wanting to obey, just being irritable overall. And also like not taking responsibility for like your school stuff or whatever. And then flight, some people they just go away into their own thoughts, they fidget, they just procrastinate. That's another one that's really prevalent. Like sometimes procrastinating, it can another thing that we can like mark as, oh, it's just us being lazy, but a lot of times it's just the anxiety is so overwhelming that get yourself to do the task. And so um unfocused, wanting to escape, freezing, like shutting down, just isolating, not being able to complete tasks, just like numb, you know? And so yeah, it's just important to note like the kinds of behaviors, and whenever you're feeling this way, just know, oh, okay, it's not that I'm a bad person. It's not that I'm a lazy person. It's not this and that. It's that I'm feeling overwhelmed because something is making me feel overwhelmed. Something is underlying there that I need to address so that I can get out of it. Because it is possible to get out of it. I think that's the hardest thing to get people to understand, especially like with just mental health talks and stuff like that. Sometimes I do feel like what lacks is a promoting the fact that you can get yourself out of these symptoms of stress and anxiety. Of course, you're never gonna be fully painless, fully stress free, but the overwhelming stress and anxiety, you can get yourself out of it. And the first step is like acknowledging and understanding that you're in that position so that you can change it. So yeah, we're talking about both stress and anxiety. So the difference, I understand stress to be more worrying about the present, worrying about something external, and that like shows repetitive thoughts, nervous habits, being indecisive. Anxiety is more worry of like the future or unknown, and that's a lot more internal, and it's just like a persistent feeling. It can lead to like panic attacks, nausea. Yeah, so they're two different things that are related because they're both related to worry. They're both related to, an instability and internal instability. But yeah, so um like I was mentioning at the beginning, stress and anxiety are symptoms of the world we're living in. So we're talking about Charlie Kirk and all of that. It's just the world we're living in. Like in the same day today, there was also a school shooting that got like less attention, but little children constantly mass killings in schools. That's like unthinkable, but it's just our normality now. Like the fact that we can just see a killing, like a slaughter in our screen, like what we saw at Charlie Kirk, or like the people in Gaza. I don't know if you guys get those videos in your timelines, but I do, and they're so graphic, and like I don't ask for them. Sometimes they just pop up like in also in media, and everything. The rhetoric that people speak, like they dehumanize people and all of that. Like everything about our world is just violent. It's just harsh. It's it just feels like it's almost impossible not to have anxiety because it feels like we're heading toward destruction, honestly. Like a lot of the symptoms that we're seeing, and as Christians we know that it is, we know that this world is heading towards something darker. So we need rest, we need to soothe our souls from the stress and anxiety of our personal lives, and of like also the world. Like it's sometimes maybe things are going fine in your life, but it's really hard to ignore like when horrible things like this happen. So how can we ever find rest in like a constantly personal, in a constant chaos, both personal and global? And like I said, I wanted to focus on Matthew 11:29 because I think this is the answer that Jesus gives us. So it says, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." So he's promising us rest, like he's giving us the path. And then verse 29, which is my focus, is, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest in your souls. So Jesus is telling us who are tired, or those who are tired and overwhelmed, to learn from him and be the way he is. He isn't just saying when you're weary and tired, just just read the Bible. He isn't just saying when you're weary and tired, just tell me about it. I mean, yes, that's like a solution, but he's giving us um the way he deals with it, basically. He's saying my yoke, the burden that I carry is easy and light. And he's saying that his yoke is easy because of the way he is. And he's telling us that if we imitate him, we can also experience a lighter burden. So he's saying, "Be like me. I am gentle and humble in heart." So being gentle and humble in heart requires a change in perspective and attitude. To be humble, we need to change our thoughts about ourselves, what we deserve, and why things happen to us. So I found this really interesting because it's just like he's giving us an action to take. Like he's saying this is the solution. Like, and it's weird that it's to be humble. Like, how is me being stressed gonna get solved by me being humbled or me being weary and burdened? How is me being humble gonna help that? So, like I wrote here, our thoughts about ourselves, what we deserve, and why things happen to us. This is the source of stress and the source of anxiety because things are constantly happening to us and around us. But we have a perspective and an analysis of the way we grasp that. So, and our attitude and our way of being kind of like determines that, the way we think about ourselves, the way we like what we think we deserve, what happens to us, why things happen to us, sorry. So I'm not saying that stress and anxiety are not valid emotions and symptoms, because they are. Like I mentioned before, like I just empathize so much with younger people. I mean, you guys that are on this call, and also just little kids and teenagers, like the fact that they see the same thing I see on my phone, they see the same things I am hearing and seeing in politics and in the world. It's just like, how can they even deal with it? I don't know, you know? So yeah, they're definitely like valid emotions and symptoms, but they are caused, like I said, by a perspective and a lens through which we view ourselves and the world. And that is what we can always change. That's not something fixed. So stress and anxiety can start with an external factor, but that's made worse by our endless thoughts. So I struggle with this so much. I honestly, I think I have OCD or something like that, but I'm very like, I'm such an overthinker. I I've learned to deal with it, obviously, especially like through Christ and all that, but that's the way I am. Like I think so hard, and sometimes it's hard to stop that. And when you just think too much, it's almost always harmful, because, life is honestly simple. Like life is, even though it seems really complicated, and sometimes you want to see things from every perspective and see things like and understand everything, or just find the why of just the world. What God teaches us, and like even his response of be humble and gentle, it's a simple solution, and almost everything that's wise is it's simple, it's brief. It doesn't require overthinking, overanalyzing. So when we're only focused on thinking, like I often do, we're paralyzed. And then we just like go through river of just even more worry, and we can even create more worries from that worry. And it's just a whole world of like worry and anxiety that just can get really, really overwhelming to the point where people, end their own lives. So the antidote to stress and anxiety is action. So that goes both for physical and spiritual. Like I said, Matthew 11:29 tells us to do something. It gives us a task. So a lot of the times, like I said, like we're worried, and like sometimes it's just thinking, 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 being on our phones, like seeing more, researching more. And all that whole time we're just in one single position. There's nothing, we're not doing anything. And that's what makes it worse. It's like there there needs to be, like, from your thoughts there needs to be an action that follows. And obviously, that action doesn't always is not always like, oh, I'm gonna solve, the world's problems or whatever. But here it's a simple action. It tells us, be a certain way, like focus on being gentle and being humble. So yeah, it's natural to feel pain, but when we're overwhelmed with stress and anxiety, this is because we can't make sense of things. So it's not the fact that we have a lot of stuff to do. Like, yes, it's the fact that we have a lot of stuff to do sometimes, but not only that, it's more like, how am I gonna get all these things done? I am not gonna have enough time. Like, we're not able to make sense of that. Or when something horrible happens, like a death or whatever, it's hard for us to wrap our heads around that. It's hard for us to, like, with our brain, just process things. And that's the stress and anxiety. It's really not the thing itself. It's more us trying to understand, make sense of the world, and make sense of how we're gonna be able to proceed to move forward. So when I feel this way, I know and I yearn for a truth that's gonna change my understanding of a situation and the world, which will bring me comfort. So this, since I was little, like I just found comfort in church, because whenever I would hear like a verse or something that related to my situation, or just change my perspective, it would just give me comfort. It would, to the point sometimes where it's almost like you're not going through that circumstance anymore. So yeah, I've mentioned these examples before, but I think they're always gonna like have to be brought up when we're talking about worry, stress, anxiety, suffering. So number one is Job. So like, we all know his story. He was suffering so much. There was just thing after thing after thing happening to him. And the solution, not fully, of course, like he was still suffering even after this, but he was able to gain some comfort in, because God took him on the tour of the whole world and showed him all these beasts, and essentially gave him a perspective of the world from his perspective, from God's perspective, and how Job and his problems fit in God's creation and his plans. So what he gave him was just like almost like a sigh, like a relief, like this is what's happening. Most of the time it's just that we don't know what's happening. It's hard to understand. And so it was even harder for Job to understand, because he's someone that worships God. He's someone that, does everything right. And there's just all these horrible things, one thing after the other. And so what God gave him was just that understanding that just gave him peace. And so that's what we want. That's what we really want. It's not that we want to not have tasks, or that we want to not ever go through anything bad. I mean, yeah, we kind of want that, but it's that we want to have that sense of peace and understanding that just like allows us to be centered. Another great example is Jesus. In the last days before he was going to get crucified, he also knew that he needed that that eternal perspective. So he sought divine power by praying and fasting, so that he could be meeker and more humble, in order to be more capable of handling dying for our own sins. So when it says, learn from me, I am humble, I'm gentle, and my yoke is easy, it's like he was able to go through that insane pain, trauma, suffering of that horrible physical death, and also the spiritual battle of the whole everyone's sins, by making himself as meek as he could, as humble as he could. And that's what he's trying to tell us, that by making ourselves that way, we're gonna be able to go through those circumstances way easier. It's never gonna be, oh, no biggie or whatever. But sometimes it is, but we're gonna be able to handle it, having that peace of mind and having that understanding. And so yeah, when we're not humble or meek, our burdens are heavier to carry because obviously the opposite of humble is arrogant. And when you're arrogant, you really resent bad things when they happen to you. I mean, it's natural. It's not to judge anyone when you're, obviously, I don't want to like put the blame on us because it like I said, like all these bad things that happen to us, it's normal to feel this way sometimes. But when we're extra arrogant, it's just harder for us to go through things because it's more like we start to question, how could this happen to me? Like me, what about, why did this happen to me? Like, why is this happening to me? And you know what I'm saying? Like, why, or just like, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do all this work? That's kind of the arrogant mindset. And when we're more humble, we think, we're not thinking that way. We're thinking, okay, I like people that are humble, they're just like, okay, like I just have to go through this, and yeah, like they're not questioning like, why me? Like, why me? Why me? Why me? They're just really in the moment, and they're just like, they're not like having an inflated sense of self, essentially. Um and so by us making ourselves meeker, we can follow Jesus' example. We can do that by praying. We can do that by fasting. We can do that by just changing our attitude and having a better disposition toward everyone. It's so hard sometimes when you're really overwhelmed, but it's possible. Um then we can go through things without the overwhelm of why is this happening, the unknown. So, yeah, essentially, only God is in a position to make judgments about how and why things happen. When we're humble, we accept everything from God, the good and the bad, and we seek His strength. So, like I said, like when we're humble, we are not questioning God. We're just accepting it and we're trusting His plan, but also seeking His strength. So, whenever I like try to find these truths that I want to change my perspective, I look to the Bible, so that's kind of obvious, but yeah, I actually didn't put the one of the verses that I wanted to put, which is he will give you strength. Um, I think it's like eagles. I forgot, but yeah, there's Joshua 1:9. He's saying, "Don't be afraid, don't be discouraged." Why? Because the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So that's some comfort we can find. We can change our perspective, and whenever we feel alone, we can change our perspective when we read this and we know, oh yeah, God's with us. Romans 5:3-5. We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So here, if I'm suffering and I don't find something, like I can't find any positivity, I can change my perspective by saying the suffering itself is gonna produce perseverance. It's gonna make me, it's gonna better me. Even when there's seemingly no positive to a situation. Um, Second Corinthians 1:9-10 says, "Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and He will deliver us again. On Him, we have set our hope that He will continue to deliver us." So again, like here, if we're going through a hard situation and we read this, we're seeing that God did this for a purpose. God did um like destined us so that we can rely on Him and that He can deliver us and that we know that He will deliver us again. And I'll just read this last one. James 1:2-4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And then actually my favorite, Romans 8:28. It's popular, but it's always just really reassuring. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So like I said, that worry, it can be soothed, it can be comforted by knowing that God is gonna do everything for our own good and that he has a plan. So there's endless verses. Um, but it's really important for us to notice when we're stressed, notice when we're anxious, and take the steps we need to take. Like one of them, like I said, reading the Bible. I really recommend Psalms. I love Psalms. Like whenever I'm like really struggling and I really can't find the time to like sit down and read a whole chapter of the Bible or something like that, I just go to Psalms and it's so comforting. And it's really, it changes your perspective. So yeah, finally I'll end by just encouraging us to take Jesus' advice, which is he was able to go through the hardest things, ever, and he did that by being humble. So that's going to help us ease our suffering, trying to gain that perspective, trying to change our perspective, slowing down and just taking the time to listen to God and to just lower ourselves, lower our ego, and um just learn to go through things with patience and with perseverance. So also externally, it's important to not make things worse. So, you can make things worse by isolating yourself. And the opposite of that, when you notice you're isolating yourself, go out of your way to talk to others, to connect with others and rely on others. That can be really hard, but that's going to be like probably one of the most important things. It's so important for us to get our thoughts out of our head, like get out of our own heads really. When we're really stressed and anxious, and just talking to people honestly, that just it like produces chemicals in us that makes us feel better. And isolating does the opposite. Like it makes us stay in that cycle of just thinking, like self-deprecating, all of that. So another thing that makes things really, really bad, and that I think we all struggle with, or most of us do, is excessive screen time. Oh my God, that is so bad for like our mental health. And I think it's like it sucks that now it's kind of like a coping mechanism when you're stressed or anxious. Oh, let me take a break. Let me scroll through Instagram. Let me scroll through this. Or even like sometimes when people are going to the bathroom, people are going just sitting and not talking or whatever, just scrolling. That's just it's really, really harmful, and it makes stress and anxiety even worse. It's only gonna take us deeper into that hole. So the opposite is praying and reading. I mean, reading of in general, like doing an brain activity like that is is helpful. Like it's a little harder, and it takes us out of that thinking cycle rather than the mindless scrolling. It can be reading anything, but obviously reading, like I said, the Psalms, reading the any chapter of the Bible is gonna be even better. So also lack of mobility, this is something so important. Like just moving your body, like I said, action is the most important thing, the most important antidote, both spiritually and also physically, like walking, and whatever you can do, working out if you can, walking, hiking, things like that, or just, dancing, whatever you can do. It produces chemicals too that like reduce stress and anxiety. Also eating junk food and then stimulants like coffee, alcohol, or drugs, obviously. That, people use that to soothe themselves, but it only makes things worse. Like it only produces more stress, more anxiety the next day. You only feel more sluggish, like bad. Healthy foods and vitamins. Whenever I start feeling stressed and anxious, I always like take vitamin emergency, which is like 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And I just take all of my vitamins and supplements that I have so that I can lift my mood. Because it's all connected. It's not just your brain, it's also your body. It's also all of that, your spirit, everything is connected. Um so yeah, also, I mean, this is obvious, but doing things that worsen your mood, don't don't do those things. But do things that improve your mood. Like I like to shower, I like to walk my dog, I like to play a game, watch movies, things like that. Like slowing down a little bit, I think is important for us in every way. And it's going to make us better people, and it's going to make us be a better Christian, honestly. Managing our stress is going to help us connect with others, help us really be a good example and be a good role model rather than being, um so, just an angry person or a jumpy person. Like, y- fighting that is going to be important for us in every way, in our success in our personal lives, with our relationships, and also like spreading the message of God. So yeah, that's all I have today. I hope that it's helpful, and I hope that we all like take care of ourselves and know that we can rely on each other. And yeah, I God bless you guys.